I've worked with members of Congress for years. I covered their campaigns as a reporter, worked with them in political campaigns, and I have a lot of respect for them. They work so hard to get there, and there's a lot of good people in Washington, but there's a set of rules that makes, no matter which party they're in, makes it incredibly difficult for them to have honest conversations, negotiate, compromise, and start passing legislation. And 93% of Americans have low confidence in the U.S. Congress. That's why I wrote this book. Look, I'm a super nerd, right? You don't write a book about Congress unless you're really passionate about this stuff. But the first half of this book is not even about the problem in Congress. It is about how we're all paying the price for this Congress being defective.
What do we face there?
Mm-hmm. You know, this is really a shame. This is where other advanced democracies are laughing at us. That we have not passed a 6-year comprehensive plan for transportation infrastructure in many, many years. And you have 1 out of 9 bridges that are structurally deficient in this country. One of them cost 12 lives in Minnesota a few years back. It's ridiculous. You have an aviation system that's running on radar technology from World War II. I mean, we could go, the water system, the waterways are 100 years old, a century old. So all of these things tie together, they're really important. And with interest rates where they are and jobs being an issue in this country, this is one of the easiest solutions to come to if the parties could get together. And a lot of them actually do agree on this, but again, political considerations hold them back from making common sense decisions. If you look at public confidence, last year we were at 7%. That's the lowest public confidence level in Congress in 40 years since Gallup started asking the question. And people sometimes I think we lose sight of the fact that we're paying for this. You know, tax day is around the corner. It cost more than $4 billion to run Congress last year, and that's a barely visible slice of the overall federal pie, $3.5 trillion that they decide how to spend on our behalf. And if 7% of us think they're doing a good job with it, maybe it's time to examine more than just the people, and that's what the book does. It goes over some of the rules. So at the heart of Unlock Congress sits something that I call the DC 4-3. And this is what I describe as the problem that's driving a lot of the dysfunction in Congress. 4 major defects that lead to 3 negative effects. And those 4 defects are the money flood, rigged U.S. House races, 2-year congressional terms in the U.S. House, and then also the filibuster in the U.S. Senate. First, the money flood. For decades now, Americans have sensed, they've smelled that something's not quite right about the system. But now, in the last 10 or 15 years, we have empirical data that tells us that we were right. There are researchers that have taken 1,800 policy questions over 20 years, and what they've found is the richest Americans, they're the ones giving the most to campaigns, have 15 times the impact on decisions that Congress makes on policy questions. 15 times as average Americans, you and me. With all the political considerations, the scooping up of money, the oversight committee, the travel, everything moving at this accelerated pace, as you say, they don't have time to read and study. Remember the Affordable Care Act? People complained.
Yes, I remember it well.
It was over 2,000 pages and said people were complaining, these guys don't have time to even read the bill. It's one bill. 50 years ago, President Johnson, Lyndon Johnson, when he was president, after 22 years in Congress, said that you get 1 year as president to get anything done on the major challenges confronting the country. And 20 years later, Ronald Reagan's budget director, David Stockman, said, forget a year, you get 6 months. 6 months in a 4-year term. And as I talk about in the book, the 2-year terms make it incredibly difficult for the parties to work together and for the legislative branch and the executive branch to work together without worrying about political considerations on every decision they make. We choose representatives, and then the representatives are supposed to favor the larger national interest. So yes, they're supposed to represent people in the districts that vote for them, but they're also supposed to have a loftier aspiration, which is to think about the whole country. But to think about the whole country, you have to have an open mind. It's a very diverse country, politically, racially, ethnically, age-wise, in every way. That's one of the best things about our country, but our system right now doesn't really embrace that politically. It's sort of at odds with it because of the rules. So when we're talking about rigged U.S. House races, we're not just talking about the way the districts are drawn, gerrymandering, which favors one party or another and has come to be the worst in modern history in the last couple of election cycles. We're also talking about something called winner-take-all in single-member districts. That means one person represents 700,000 people in a congressional district, and all they have to do to win is get 50% plus one. This makes most politicians in those districts listen to the base and not consider a ton of ideas, or even a few ideas in some cases, from the other side of the aisle. And then you have a ton of people in that district who go unrepresented. They can show up and fulfill their civic duty of voting, but in 85 to 90% of the districts in the U.S. House, it's a foregone conclusion. We already know the outcome of the election before it even takes place. And finally, the filibuster. Also not in the Constitution, an accident of history which allows one person in a nation of 320 million people to grind all business to a halt. It's insane. I love this quote from Thomas Jefferson. So this is a year before the ratification of the Constitution. And he basically, what he's saying is, if this thing's not working, if the assembly line's not producing a solid product, we have the power. The Constitution has it in it for us to change the rules. And there's no question that in Congress there are some bad apples. But the point of this book is that it's not all about the people. The rules make it harder for them to come together and be productive. But we've got to push them to change the rules. They won't change it on their own because the status quo serves incumbents that are already in office. We've got to push it, and we first have to learn about it. Thank you all for listening, for reading the book, for your questions. You can go to unlockcongress.com, sign up for the newsletter. That's the first thing you can do. So just sign up to find out when something's going on that has something to do with these reforms, if you're interested. And I really appreciate you taking the time today. Thank you. Thank you.